She was called the perfect bride of Lagos, flawless, admired, untouchable. But no one had ever seen her without makeup, not even her husband. On their wedding night, he locked the door, only to uncover a truth that would break and heal them both. Broken heart. This emotional African love story reveals how pain, shame, and scars can turn into power when faced with true love. Amira's journey from hiding behind beauty to embracing her real self will leave you speechless. Crescent Moon. She was the most beautiful bride the town had ever seen, or so they thought. Her smile, perfect. Her skin, flawless. Her eyes, shining like wet diamonds. But no one, not even the man she married, had ever seen her without makeup. Not once. People whispered about it in the market. She even sleeps with it on, they'd say. Maybe she's hiding something. But Amira just smiled and kept walking, her veil always drawn low, her lips always painted red as sunset. They called her the perfect bride of Lagos. But perfection comes with a price. That night, after the music faded and the guests left the hall, the mansion fell silent. The only sound was the faint clinking of her jewelry as she walked into her new husband's room. The air smelled of rose petals and candle wax. But her hands trembled slightly. Because for the first time, she couldn't hide behind the noise, the lights, or the crowd. Tonight, she was alone with him. And tonight, he was going to see her. Amira had married Tund, the young billionaire everyone adored. He was calm, kind, and handsome in that quiet way that drew people in. But there was something else about him, something that made her heart race. He wasn't the type to play games. As she stood by the mirror, pretending to fix her earrings, Tund walked in and closed the door behind him. Click. That sound, so soft yet final, echoed in her chest like thunder. Her body stiffened. The lock. He had locked the door. And for the first time, she felt naked, even in her long gold dress and layers of foundation. You see, Amira had a secret. A secret she had carried for years beneath her powder and lipstick. The reason she never went swimming, never cried in public, never allowed rain to touch her face. Behind her beauty, was something she prayed no one would ever see. As she stood there, heart pounding, her reflection trembled in the mirror. The woman looking back wasn't real, it was paint, carefully brushed on for years. Layers of it. Her mother used to say, a woman's face is her power. But Amira had turned that into her prison. Because once, long ago, when she was a poor girl in Ajagunal, people laughed at her. Her skin had scars, small but visible, marks from a childhood accident with cooking oil. The burns had faded, but not completely. And people never let her forget. So she learned early, if beauty was what they respected, she would build it, even if it wasn't real. And she did. No one ever saw the scars again. Until tonight. She could feel Tund's eyes on her from across the room. He smiled gently, but there was curiosity in his gaze. She turned away, pretending to arrange her jewelry box, pretending to be calm. But her hands shook. Her breath came unevenly. Then she heard his voice, soft, but firm. Amira, you can take off your makeup now. She froze. Every drop of blood in her body felt like ice. The world tilted. No one had ever told her that before. No one had ever asked to see her real face. But Tund didn't move. He just stood there quietly, waiting, like a man who wanted truth more than perfection. Amira's heart broke a little. Because she wanted to trust him. But she had lived too long behind a mask. Her fingers hovered near her cheek, but she couldn't do it. She smiled weakly, whispering something about being tired, about wanting to rest first. But Tund didn't argue. He only nodded, walked closer, and reached out to wipe a tiny smudge near her jaw. And that tiny gesture, simple, innocent, was the beginning of everything. Because as his thumb brushed her skin, something came off. A patch of foundation. And beneath it, something he did not expect. Something that made him stop breathing. Tun's hand froze mid-air. The room felt suddenly colder, as if the candles had lost their flame. The soft gold light reflected off the mirror, and there, just below Amira's jaw, was a patch of skin unlike the rest. It was pale, uneven, marked. Not ugly. No, just real. But to Amira, it was the worst thing that could have happened. Her chest tightened, her breath hitched, and her heart slammed so hard she thought he could hear it. For a second, she thought of running, of hiding in the bathroom, scrubbing her face back to perfection. But it was too late. His eyes had already seen what years of makeup had hidden. She waited for disgust. For the silence that comes before rejection. Instead, Tun said nothing. He just looked at her reflection in the mirror, his expression unreadable. And that silence, it was louder than a scream. Amira swallowed hard. She wanted to speak, to explain, to apologize for not being what he thought she was. But her lips trembled too much to form words. She took one slow breath, then another. He still didn't move. Then finally, his voice came. Calm. Deep. Unshaken. But it wasn't what she expected. You've been carrying this mask for a long time, haven't you? The words hit her like a wave. She blinked rapidly, her throat tightening. No one had ever spoken to her like that, like he could see beyond her painted skin, into the pain beneath it. And for some reason, that made it worse. Because it meant she couldn't hide anymore. Her knees weakened. She sat slowly on the edge of the bed, eyes fixed on her reflection. She looked perfect still, except for that one patch, that single window into her truth. The tears burned behind her lashes, but she refused to let them fall. Crying would ruin everything, the eyeliner, the illusion, the armor she had built to survive. But Tund, he stepped closer. Each step felt heavy, deliberate, patient. He stopped behind her and spoke softly. I don't care about what's on your skin, Amira. But I care about what's weighing on it. She shook her head quickly, whispering, you don't understand. People always looked at me with pity before. Like I was broken. I couldn't let them see me like that again. Her voice cracked halfway through. The truth scraped her throat like glass. She remembered those days, selling fruit under the hot sun, hearing the whispers, the laughter of other girls who called her burnt face. She remembered crying into her mother's wrapper, promising herself she'd never be looked at with pity again. So she learned. She painted. She mastered beauty until people bowed to it. But it never healed what was beneath. And now, sitting there under the candlelight, she felt like that same little girl again. Exposed. Ashamed. Small. But Tund knelt in front of her. His face was close enough that she could see the reflection of the flames in his eyes. He didn't touch her. He didn't force her. He just looked at her, with something she hadn't seen in years, gentleness. And for the first time since her wedding day began, Amira stopped pretending. Her hands moved to her face slowly. Trembling fingers reached for the wipes she always kept hidden in her bag. She hesitated. Then, one by one, she began to remove the layers. The foundation. The contour. The concealer. With every wipe, the mirror showed less of the woman the world adored, and more of the woman she really was. When she finally looked up, the face staring back was bare. Tired. Real. She braced herself for him to flinch, to turn away, to regret marrying her. But Tund only smiled, softly, quietly. And in that moment, Amira realized something she had never known before. The real tragedy wasn't that she had scars. It was that she believed she had to hide them to be loved. For a long moment, silence filled the room. The kind of silence that carries both pain and peace. Amira sat there, barefaced, her heart thudding like a distant drum. She could feel the air on her skin for the first time in years. It felt strange, almost freeing, yet terrifying. Her reflection no longer glittered. The woman in the mirror wasn't the perfect bride of Lagos anymore. She was just Amira, the girl who had once burned her face cooking for her siblings, who had learned to survive by wearing beauty like armor. But when she looked up at Tund again, his eyes were soft, not shocked. Not disgusted. Just, human. And that confused her. She whispered, barely audible, "You're not angry." Tund's lips curved into a faint smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. "Why would I be angry, Amira? You think I married you for the foundation on your face?" The words landed with warmth and ache mixed together. She didn't know whether to cry or to laugh. Because she had expected judgment, but instead, he spoke like someone who had seen pain before. And then, for the first time that night, he looked away. His eyes darkened with something she couldn't quite read. "You're not the only one who hides things," he said quietly. The tone of his voice made her lift her head. There was something in the way he said it, something that sounded heavier than her own burden. He turned slowly and walked toward the window. The moonlight spilled over his shoulders, glinting off the gold of his wedding ring. For a moment, he didn't speak. When he finally did, his voice was lower, softer. 3 years ago, he began, "I was engaged." Amira blinked. She hadn't expected that. She was everything I thought I wanted. Beautiful, confident, well-spoken, but I didn't know she loved my status, not me. When I had an accident, when I lost part of my hearing and my face was scarred for a while, she left. Just like that. He turned to her then. The faintest trace of a scar, hidden near his left ear. Caught the light. Amira's breath caught. He smiled bitterly. "Makeup hides your pain. Silence hides mine." It hit her differently. Because for once, she saw him not as the perfect man from magazines, not as the billionaire who seemed untouchable, but as someone broken, too. He had hidden his flaw behind calmness. She had hidden hers behind beauty. Two people, perfect on the outside, terrified on the inside. And somehow, that truth bound them in a quiet, invisible way. Amira looked down, her fingers curling around the bedsheet. "So all this time," she whispered, "we were both pretending." Tund nodded. "Yes. But maybe it's time we stop." The words hung in the air, heavy and soft like falling feathers. For the first time, Amira smiled, a real one. Small. Shy. Bare. It wasn't the kind of smile that made photographers chase her at events. It was the kind that came from deep inside, the kind that made her feel alive. Tund reached out then, not to touch her face, but to lift her chin gently so she would look at him. His thumb brushed a tear that had escaped down her cheek. "You're beautiful, Amira," he said simply. "Not because of what you cover, but because of what you've endured." The words melted something inside her. All the years she had spent building walls around her scars suddenly felt unnecessary. Because for the first time, someone didn't look through her makeup, they looked past it. And that was the moment her healing began. The candles flickered as the night grew quieter. Two souls, one scarred inside, one scarred outside, sat in silence, learning the meaning of love that sees beyond the surface. That night, Amira didn't put her makeup back on. And Tund didn't unlock the door. Not to trap her. But to keep the world out, while she finally set herself free. Morning came quietly, but the world outside their door was already awake, and whispering. In the soft light of dawn, Amira lay still beside Tund, staring at the ceiling. The air smelled of roses and cocoa butter. Her skin, clean and bare, felt strange against the silk pillow. No foundation. No powder. No mask. And yet, she'd never felt lighter. But the peace was fragile. Because she knew what awaited her beyond that bedroom door, the eyes, the cameras, the guests still lingering in the mansion after the wedding. The world that had worshipped her perfection would soon see the truth. She turned slightly, her voice low. "Tund, what will people say?" He sat up slowly, his chest bare, eyes calm but steady. "Let them say what they want. You don't live for people, Amira." But she shook her head, her heart heavy. "You don't understand. My whole life has been built on what people think. If they see me like this, they'll laugh. They'll call me fake." Tund looked at her for a long time before answering. "Maybe it's time they see real instead of perfect." His words lingered in the air, tender but strong. By the time they walked downstairs, sunlight had spilled through the wide marble hall. The servants bowed politely, though their eyes darted up, curious, confused. Amira could feel the stares pierce through her. Every step felt like walking barefoot on glass. Her heart pounded as one of Tund's cousins whispered something and covered her mouth to hide a laugh. Another woman, one who had envied Amira for years, muttered, "So this is the face behind the queen's crown." The word stung. Amira looked down, shame pressing on her chest like a stone. For a second, she almost turned back, almost ran upstairs to grab the bag of makeup hidden in her drawer. But Tund's hand found hers. Firm. Steady. Warm. He didn't flinch. Didn't hesitate. Instead, he squeezed her hand gently and spoke, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This is my wife, Amira," he said. "And this is her true face, the one I fell in love with." The hall went silent. Amira froze. Every pair of eyes turned toward him. The gossipers who had whispered now stood awkwardly still. Even the women who had mocked her moments before dropped their gaze. Tund didn't stop there. His voice carried the calm of a man who had seen truth and wasn't ashamed of it. "Beauty isn't in the skin," he said. "It's in what you survive. My wife has survived more than any of you can imagine. And if you call that imperfection, then I pray you never know what true strength looks like." There was something about his tone, quiet yet commanding, that silenced the hall completely. For the first time in her life, Amira didn't hide. She lifted her head slowly, her bare face glowing softly under the morning light. And somehow, that unfiltered truth was more beautiful than all the makeup she'd ever worn. A few people began to clap, first one, then another, until the sound filled the room. Tund's mother, who had been skeptical about the marriage at first, came forward and touched Amira's cheek gently. "My son chose well," she said. Tears welled in Amira's eyes. Not from shame this time, but from peace. She finally understood that her scars didn't make her less. They made her herself. Later that day, as they stood on the balcony overlooking the city, she whispered, "I thought love meant hiding the parts of me that were broken." Tund smiled. "No, Amira. Love means showing them, and finding someone who stays." And in that simple moment, surrounded by light and the sound of distant traffic, she realized the lesson she had been running from all her life. True beauty isn't what the world sees. It's what you accept within yourself. By evening, the world already knew. Someone had snapped a photo, Amira standing beside Tund, barefaced, no longer the flawless, perfect bride of Lagos. By noon, the picture had traveled across every gossip blog, every Instagram feed, every TV headline. The billionaire's bride exposed. Fake beauty. Real scandal. The same people who once adored her elegance now mocked her honesty. The same fans who called her flawless now said she was finished. The internet had no mercy. Comments flooded in, cruel, sharp, endless. She catfished him. So all that beauty was fake. She's not even that pretty without it. Each word cut deeper than the last. Amira scrolled for a moment before she couldn't anymore. The phone slipped from her trembling hands and landed softly on the carpet. For a second, she couldn't breathe. She thought she was healed, but the world had just reopened the wound she spent years hiding. Tun found her sitting by the window, knees pulled to her chest, tears glistening silently. He didn't speak right away. He just sat beside her, watching the sunset stretch across the sky like melted gold. Finally, she whispered, "They're tearing me apart, Tun. They're calling me a liar. Maybe I should have just kept pretending." Tun turned his head slowly, his voice low but firm. "No, Amira. They're not tearing you apart, they're revealing who you are. The real ones will stay. The rest were never yours." His words carried weight, but pain doesn't disappear overnight. Amira's mind replayed every cruel comment, every laughing emoji, every headline. She'd spent years building a brand of perfection, and in one day, it was gone. She thought of the young girls who once messaged her saying, "You're my role model. What would they think now?" But the next morning, something unexpected happened. A message came in. Then another. Then hundreds. Girls. Women. Even mothers. All writing the same thing. "Thank you. I finally feel seen. I've been hiding my scars too. You gave me courage." By noon, the same post that mocked her turned into something else, a movement. #BarefaceChallenge. Women all over Nigeria began posting pictures of their unfiltered faces. Some had acne, some had birthmarks, others had burns like hers. They all tagged her name, flooding the internet with raw, honest beauty. Amira couldn't believe it. The same platform that once destroyed her image was now amplifying her truth. She looked at Tund, who smiled knowingly. "You see, sometimes your greatest shame becomes someone else's healing." For the first time, she laughed, a soft, trembling laugh that carried both pain and pride. A few days later, she went live for the first time without makeup. No filters. No editing. Just Amira. Her voice shook as she spoke, but her heart didn't. "I used to think beauty was what people said about me," she said. "But now I know, it's what I say about myself when no one's watching. I used to hide my scars because I thought they made me ugly. But they made me strong. So if you're watching this and you've ever felt you're not enough, remember, you don't need perfection to be powerful." The comments poured in again, but this time, they weren't insults. They were love. And somewhere deep inside, she knew, this was what she was meant for all along. Because sometimes, it takes losing the world's approval to find your own reflection again. That night, as she and Tun stood on the balcony, city lights twinkling below, he wrapped his arm around her and whispered, "You see how the world mocked your truth, and still couldn't kill your light." She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "They tried to destroy me," she said softly, "but they only removed my mask." And in that quiet, glowing night, she finally understood. Real beauty doesn't fear exposure. It shines brighter after the storm. Peace never lasts long when the past hasn't been buried. A week after Amira's live broadcast went viral, her life seemed almost perfect again. The #BarefaceChallenge had turned her into a symbol of courage. Brands were calling. Magazines wanted interviews, not about her beauty this time, but about her truth. Everywhere she went, women smiled at her like they finally understood something new about themselves. But then, one afternoon, as she prepared for a talk show, she received a message that froze her blood. "You think you've escaped who you were, Amira? You owe me. Don't forget who gave you that first mirror." Her hands shook. She knew that voice. That tone. That cruelty. It was Kemi, the woman who once owned the beauty shop where Amira worked years ago, the same woman who had taken her in after the accident, promising to help her rebuild her confidence, but instead used her pain to make money. Kemi was the one who taught her to cover everything, to hide, to depend on products that kept her trapped. She'd sold Amira's image for profit, calling her the miracle girl while pocketing the money. And now she wanted to come back. By evening, the media had already picked up Kemi's story. She claimed she had created Amira's beauty, trained her, built her fame, and deserved credit for her success. The headline stung. The truth behind Amira's transformation. The woman who made the perfect bride. Tun found her sitting by the window again, silent, staring at nothing. He placed a glass of water beside her. "Don't let her rewrite your story," he said gently. Amira's voice cracked. "But what if people believe her? What if they think I'm fake again?" He smiled faintly. "Then tell them yourself. Truth doesn't fear noise." The next day, she walked into the same studio that had once photographed her flawless face, but this time, she came without foundation. Without filters. The cameras flashed. The lights were harsh. But she didn't flinch. She sat in front of the microphone, took a deep breath, and began to speak, not like a celebrity, but like a woman reclaiming her name. "I won't deny that Kemi was part of my journey," she said, her voice steady. "She gave me the first brush, the first makeup kit. But she didn't build me. She built a mask. And I wore it until it almost became my skin. But the woman you see now, the woman who learned to love her scars, she wasn't made in any shop. She was born the day I took the mask off." The studio went silent. And that silence was louder than applause. Later that evening, as the interview aired, thousands of comments poured in again. But this time, the world didn't mock her. They stood with her. Even the same blogs that once dragged her name now celebrated her courage. The headline changed too. From makeup to movement, the woman who redefined beauty. Amira smiled quietly as she watched the sunset that night from her balcony. The scars on her cheek glowed under the orange light, soft and proud. Tun joined her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "So, is this the end of your story?" he teased. She shook her head, smiling. "No, Tun. It's the beginning of my truth." They stood there for a long moment, the city humming below, the wind whispering through the curtains. And for the first time, Amira didn't wish to hide, not from mirrors, not from people, not from herself. Because she had finally learned the secret no foundation could ever give. You are not beautiful because they say so. You are beautiful because you survived. And as the night deepened, her reflection in the glass looked back at her, bare, imperfect, and free. No masks. No fear. Just Amira. The girl who finally learned that the truest glow comes from within. Sparkle's moral of the story. True beauty isn't what hides your scars, it's what shines through them. When you stop living for people's approval, you finally find your peace. The end. Please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks.